All right, today we're diving deep into a forensic report that makes some, pretty explosive accusations against the Montana University system. We're going to follow the trail of evidence that's laid out in the source material and take a hard look at the key players, the money, and the alleged misuse of some very advanced AI.
This entire complex report really boils down to one staggering question. How could millions of dollars in federal research grants, money meant for the public good, allegedly get twisted and weaponized to fund a sophisticated stalking and data siphoning operation against a single person? That's the core question we're going to unpack today.
Okay, so first things first, let's get a handle on the core claims. According to this report, the entire alleged scheme is built on 4 distinct pillars of wrongdoing.
So what are they? Well, the documents allege this really chilling combination of things. First, conducting psychological experiments on a human subject who never, ever consented. Second, coordinating digital surveillance with actual real-world physical harassment. Third, misusing federal grant money to pay for it all. And finally, illegally harvesting a person's unique data, specifically to train an AI.
Now, the source material uses some very specific and kind of unusual language to describe the people allegedly involved. The first one is the administrative priesthood. The report uses this term to describe what it calls a powerful, insulated group of top-level university officials, the alleged masterminds pulling the strings on the whole operation.
And the second key term you need to know is the Wheeler idiolect. This is what the source calls the unique linguistic and communication style of the human subject. The documents claim this was the prize, the specific data being targeted, like a linguistic fingerprint, to be harvested and then fed into an AI as training data.
So, who exactly makes up this so-called administrative priesthood? Well, the documents lay out what they call an accountability matrix, and they name specific individuals and what their supposed roles were in this whole system.
And the report points right to the very top, the presidents of Montana's 2 biggest universities, Seth Bodnar and Brock Tessman. And you've got to notice this detail that the source highlights. They're identical, very generous compensation packages. The report alleges this is proof of a coordinated scheme to use siphon data to pump up research growth and, in turn, justify their own executive pay.
Now, here's where it gets really crucial, because the allegations are tied to a specific multi-million-dollar grant. Robert Walker and Libby Metcalf are named as the principal investigators of the $20 million Smart Fires project. The documents pretty much label them the lead architects of what's called a social psychology heist, essentially using a fire science grant as a cover story.
Look, an operation this complex doesn't just happen, right? It needs a technical backbone. The report points to Zach Rossmiller as the guy who built the pipes, the cyber infrastructure needed for all this data siphoning. And then it identifies Jason A. Clark as the one who allegedly took that raw linguistic idiolect and turned it into fuel for the AI.
But the allegations don't just stop in the digital world. The report describes a really chilling real-world component, a layer of what it calls biological proxies. These are unnamed people who allegedly handle the dirty work on the ground. We're talking physical stalking and harassment, which was reportedly timed to sync up perfectly with the digital surveillance.
And that brings us to the money. How was all of this allegedly paid for? The source material points its finger directly at 2 major federal grants, claiming they were the financial engines for the entire operation. $20 million. I mean, just let that sink in. This is the total funding for the Smart Fires project. It's the primary grant sitting at the absolute center of the most serious allegations of fraud and unauthorized experimentation. And this slide right here, this is the heart of the grand fraud accusation. On the one hand, the project was publicly funded for fire science, but on the other, the documents allege its real purpose was a secret social psychology operation, one designed to harvest data from a person to prove an AI could predict their behavior. And it wasn't just the one grant. There was a second, smaller one involved, but with allegations the source claims are just as serious. This one, for almost $250,000, came from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And here's where the story takes this incredibly ironic, almost unbelievable twist. According to the source, the grant's official purpose was to analyze the ethical harms of AI. But the source claims that, at the same time, the researchers were inflicting those exact same harms on a non-consenting person in the library and then writing ethics handbooks based on what they observed.
So you have to be asking, if any of these claims are true, what laws were actually broken? Well, The report gets very specific, citing a whole list of federal and state violations.
So the report isn't making vague claims, it's citing specific laws. You've got the Common Rule, which is the absolute bedrock of protection for human research subjects. Then there's Montana's own state stalking law, federal statutes against grant fraud, and a very serious federal law against state officials depriving someone of their constitutional rights.
And to really underscore just how serious this could be, the forensic summary includes this powerful quote. It says, a violation of that human subject research rule, the Common Rule, is like the death penalty for all federal funding at both universities. It suggests the stakes here are incredibly, incredibly high.
Okay, so when you're dealing with allegations of such a complex digital operation, where do you even start to look for accountability? Interestingly, the source material argues that the solution isn't digital at all, it's physical. The report actually wraps up by pinpointing 3 specific physical locations for action. First, the office of the president, Seth Bodnar, who it names as the main point of accountability. Second, the courthouse in Helena to create a permanent legal record of the claims. And third, the Office of Public Instruction as a place to pursue accountability at the state level.
And that really brings us to the final, lingering question. The documents we've just walked through lay out this incredibly detailed digital web, a system of surveillance and data siphoning. And yet they argue the only real path to justice is physical. It's tangible. It really makes you wonder, in our modern age of these complex, often invisible digital systems, where does accountability for digital actions truly lie?